Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greener Side Language Academy. Last time we took a look at the CSEC Spanish oral exam, that's paper 3, particularly the guided conversation. In that video, we zoomed in on some past paper questions under the theme home and family. To watch that video, you can click on the info card in the top right corner of this video. Go ahead, click it. Now, if you have already watched that video, let's take a look at some questions under the theme for this video, daily routine. Also, before we start the video, I'd like to introduce you to an awesome channel that focuses on the French language. It's called French Action. Please go over and subscribe to this channel. As you can see, there are very many tips on the French language. As much as we do French over on this channel, I definitely recommend this channel because it has many tips. It talks about the ins and outs of the French language. And more recently, Jenny, who is the presenter on this channel, went through what the French CSEC paper 3 would look like. So for those of you who do French as well, you can go ahead and jump over to that video or to that channel, French Action, and of course you will enjoy the lessons with Jenny. Alright, so back to our video for today. So again, we're taking some questions from the CSEC Spanish paper from 2010. And as you can see, we're discussing daily routine. One thing that I can note about daily routine is that there are usually a lot of questions involving reflexive verbs. So anybody who has, been learning Spanish or who has been preparing for this exam will know that whenever we do daily routine, we tend to learn reflexive verbs at the same time for that exact reason. Because a lot of the things we do when we get up in the morning and as we go throughout our days have to do with reflexive actions, such as, brushing our teeth, showering, bathing, putting on our clothes. They're all actions that we do to ourselves, hence the name reflexive actions or reflexive verbs. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first question asks, ¿Con qué te desayunas todos los días? So right off the bat, we're seeing a reflexive verb, desayunarse. So the question is asking, ¿Con qué te desayunas? What do you eat for breakfast or do you have for breakfast? Todos los días. So of course, another important topic, grammatical point that will come up is adverbs of frequency, which are adverbs that tell us how often we do a particular action. So we have todos los días, every day. That's telling us how often you do that particular action. So let's see if we can answer the question. First of all, we're gonna look to put the main verb in the yo form to answer from your perspective, right? So if the question is asking you, what is it that you eat for breakfast every day? You're going to respond, me desayuno con. So essentially, you're just finding the yo form, the first person form of the verb desayunarse, and answering that question. So we have me desayuno con. In fact, you can start your answer by saying todos los días. So you're taking back a section of that question. And of course, sometimes this shows the examiner that you have heard everything and you understand everything. So todos los días me desayuno con, and then you tell what you eat for breakfast. Some persons will say something like huevos fritos con pan, right? Fried eggs with bread. You could say something that is, I don't know, more Caribbean, I don't know. You can say bacalao Bacalao is saltfish, or in some islands you say codfish. So bacalao con ñame. Ñame is yam, right? Just as an example of something, if you want to be more Caribbean with your response. It could be something like panqueques, if it's more of a continental breakfast, right? You could say con una tortilla. Anything you want to say that would logically be eaten for breakfast, that's something that you can say. You could even say con café. Some persons have coffee for breakfast, just coffee. So that's an option. But you want to keep the grammatical form that you see here, but just adapt it to your perspective. So todos los días me desayuno con. Then, of course, we have this question. It's quite an interesting question. ¿Qué ingredientes necesitas para preparar tu plato favorito? Bueno, so here, what do you think this question is asking us? We see the word ingredientes, preparar, plato favorito, right? So automatically we know we're going to talk about some ingredients for our favorite dish. So the question is asking just that. Which ingredients do you need to prepare your favorite dish? So normally I would suggest to start off your answer, you first state what your favorite dish is. It doesn't hurt to. I mean, not that it's necessary, but it would be good because that way it gives the examiner or the examiner an idea of what you're going for when you state those ingredients. All right, so you could say mi plato favorito, my favorite dish, es, how about arroz con pollo? Let's make it simple, right? Let's not be too extravagant, right? So mi plato favorito es arroz con pollo. So you state what your favorite dish is. Then you're gonna use the same structure. The same words that you're given, you can use that to your benefit for a lot of the questions. Para preparar arroz con pollo, or you can say para preparar este plato, this dish, necesito, so using back the same verb necesitar, necesito pollo, arroz, claro, cebollas, onions. You could say, something like tomates, sal, y pimiento, and pepper, right? So as long as you're able to state just a few ingredients that you'd use in food, I think you should be fine, So keep it simple, keep it short, but also ensure that it is rich in information, as I always say. All right, what about number 3? ¿Qué platos comes los domingos a la hora del almuerzo? All right, so ¿qué platos comes? Which dishes do you eat los domingos? So whenever you see los before the day of the week, and the day of the week is in a plural form, it's talking about, for example, in this case, Sundays. So on Sundays, which dishes do you eat? A la hora del almuerzo, at lunchtime. All right. So as Caribbean people, we tend to have, it just depends on the country, but in many countries we have dinner very early on a Sunday, and we have a big, big, big meal, right? So we could talk about, chicken with rice and peas and vegetables. I don't know. That's something that I know in a lot of islands in the Caribbean, you would eat on a Sunday afternoon, very early. It's really dinner, but I mean, it's at lunchtime a lot of the times that we eat it. So, let's see. Los domingos. So you using back the same expression. So on Sundays, I eat, so same verb comer, but in the yo form, como. Let's change the meat this time. Instead of pollo, let's say puerco, right? So como puerco. You could say roast pork. So puerco asado con arroz y legumbres, for example. Los domingos como puerco asado con arroz y legumbres. Right? A la hora del almuerzo. Okay. I think it's also possible for you to say almuerzo puerco asado. So I have that for lunch. Because remember, almorzar, right? You could just say almuerzo puerco asado con arroz y legumbres, right? To say that you have that for lunch. Because almorzar means to have lunch. So almorzar, then of course the actual food would mean you have that food for lunch. So you could have como, a la hora del almuerzo, or just simply almuerzo, and then that particular expression. So I'll just do it the last way so that you can see how it would look. And there you have it. So just for this, I mean, you need to ensure that you know some foods, right? Know your reflexive verbs and know your adverbs of frequency, as I stated earlier. Now, describe un domingo típico en tu casa. Now, what the examiner or what CSEC is looking for here is essentially some activities, some leisure activities that would be done, typically on a Sunday, on a day when you don't have work or school. So, what would a typical Sunday be like? Well, a lot of persons go to church on a Sunday. Some persons go shopping on a Sunday. Others spend time with their families or go to a park or something like that, do work on the farm. It could be anything. Let's use 3 of those possibilities. So we're using back the same thing. So in order to use back the same expressions, it means then that you would have to be listening carefully to the examiner. So, un domingo típico or in this case, you could just say los domingos to make it simple. So, all right, let's do it that way. Un domingo típico en mi casa consiste en, so consists of, and then you could state the activities in the infinitive, right? Or of course in noun form, if you like, if the activity can be stated as a noun. Or you could just simply say los domingos mi familia y yo, so my family and I, and then the activities which would be conjugated in the nosotros form, since you have mi familia y yo, right? What are some activities? So the ones that we mentioned before: ir a la iglesia, to go to church. So if you have mi familia y yo, it would be mi familia y yo vamos a la iglesia. You could have ir de compras, which is to go shopping. Mi familia y yo vamos de compras. Or the last one that we looked at, mi familia y yo, you could say something like we have fun together. So divertirse juntos, right? Which means to have fun together. So conjugated in the nosotros form to match mi familia y yo. Mi familia y yo nos divertimos juntos. All right? So those are some possibilities. What about number 5 now? ¿Cómo ayuda tu papá en la cocina? Now this is a tricky question I find with my students. They often hear what it's not asking. And the difference between The two possibilities is one word. So let's go through it. Let me explain. ¿Cómo ayuda tu papá en la cocina? This literally is asking, how does your father help in the kitchen? It's not asking, how do you help your father in the kitchen? First of all, how do we know that it's not asking that? Well, if it were asking you, it would be ¿Cómo ayudas a tu papá en la cocina? It's not asking you how you help your father in the kitchen at all. It's asking you how your father helps in the kitchen. So the question would be ¿Cómo? If it were asking how do you help your father, it would be ¿Cómo ayudas a tu papá? So notice the conjugation changes and you have the personal a following ayudar en la cocina, right? And that's not what is being asked. Where the question is asking about how your father helps. So we'll just scrap this one. So how does your father help in the kitchen? Maybe he washes the dishes. Think of activities that he does in the kitchen. Maybe he actually cooks. But you have to ensure that whatever you say is related to the kitchen, or else the examiner is going to think that you didn't fully understand, that maybe you think you're just thinking about a more general question like how does your father help out around the house. So ensure that you mention an activity related to the kitchen, which normally would be washing up the dishes or cooking. Let's start. Mi papá ayuda en la cocina por means by. So you can say por preparar la cena, by preparing dinner, right? I'm gonna change the color because we need to keep it a bit uniform. Por preparar la cena, right? Or it could be por lavar los platos, as we said, washing the dishes. Could be anything. Right? There we go. Simple question, just make sure you listen carefully. Now for the next one, ¿qué haces antes de acostarte de lunes a viernes? So de lunes a viernes would be also an adverbial expression of frequency because it's pinpointing how frequently or how often you do a particular action, or in this case more of like a routine action. So from Mondays to Fridays and the weekdays, what do you do? ¿Qué haces antes de acostarte? Antes de means before, and remember what acostarse means? Means to go to bed. And notice the reflexive verb here, that is the reflexive pronoun, that's used is te. So of course it's referring to tú. So ¿qué haces tú antes de acostarte? So what do you do before you go to bed? De lunes a viernes, from Monday to Friday. Alright? Several things you can do. You could say something like, I don't know, antes de acostarme. So you start out by saying antes de acostarme. Notice the shift in reflexive pronoun. It's no longer te because you're speaking from the yo perspective now. So that reflexive pronoun changes from te to me. Antes de acostarme, yo leo. Or you can say yo leo un libro interesante. I read an interesting book. Or, I don't know, rezo, right? It could be I pray. Rezo a Dios, something like that. Or just rezo, which means I pray. You could also say limpio mi dormitorio. Some persons tidy up right before they go to bed. I've heard that one. Or it could be something like me preparo para dormir, something like that. I prepare myself to go to bed or to sleep. Okay. Many options. Just find out how you would respond and find out how you'd say that in Spanish. Using, of course, following those grammatical rules that we've been looking at. Next question. ¿A qué hora sales de casa todos los días para ir a la escuela? This one's very long, but it's very simple. Just listen carefully and try to catch everything. Okay, this is maybe one of those that you might ask for a repetition, because it's a bit long and sometimes it's difficult to catch all the details. ¿A qué hora? What time? So just take everything in how would I say this now, in bite-sized pieces. So don't just do it word for word. Try to take it in phrases. ¿A qué hora? You know that means at what time. Sales de casa, you leave from home. Todos los días, every day, para ir a la escuela, to go to school. So at what time do you leave home every day to go to school? So how would you respond? Let's start with that adverb of frequency. Todos los días. Ay. Todos los días. Salgo. So the action now by the verb salir. Salgo. Remember, salgo is the yo form for salir. It's a go-go verb. Todos los días. Salgo de casa a las. Remember, when we're stating time, just to say it's 10 o'clock, for example, we say son las 10, and if it's 1 o'clock, es la una. But when we're saying that something happens at a particular time, we drop off the verb ser and we put a. So salgo de casa a las. What time do people usually leave home to go to school? Let's say a las 6. A las 6 at 6 o'clock. A las 6 de la mañana, if you want to be specific, para ir a la escuela. Okay? Alrighty. So there you go. You can adapt that however you want, but that's an easy way to answer the question. Really simple question, just has a lot of elements. You have to listen carefully. Alright, now this one is a bit more of an open question. The last question is always an open question that involves, a lot of thought and maybe a few sentences in your response. ¿Cuál sería para ti una rutina ideal? So notice the use of sería, which is a conditional, the conditional form of the verb ser, which is like to say would be. So what would be for you, para ti, an ideal routine? So in this sense, you can do one of many things. You could use the conditional tense to say, this would be the perfect routine. I would wake up at this time. I would go to school at this time, or I wouldn't go to school at all. I would, sleep until late. You understand? You can use the conditional throughout for all of your responses, right? But there is also an alternative. So the alternative is actually an expression that you learn without learning the conditional tense, or learning that expression is a part of the conditional tense. So let's start with that alternative. We're going to start with the easier way. So me gustaría. That's expression which means I would like. Oops. Me gustaría. Right? Plus, it's usually followed by what? The infinitive. So all of those activities that you do in your daily routine, the ideal daily routine, would come in the infinitive. Those verbs, you wouldn't have to know to conjugate them in the conditional tense at all. So this is for those who didn't quite get to the conditional tense in class, who still struggle to understand it. Just use me gustaría. But know for sure that you'll have to preface it with this phrase, como una rutina, or not una. Como rutina ideal. So as an ideal routine, me gustaría, this is just an option. Como rutina ideal, me gustaría plus infinitive. So let's try some stuff. Me gustaría levantarme, get up. I'd like to get up. So notice we're still using the infinitive for our verbs because it follows me gustaría. But notice that the reflexive pronoun changes to suit who we're talking about, which is me, yo, right? Me gustaría levantarme a las 12, I don't know, a mediodía. Some persons think that the best routine is if you kind of wake up at midday and you're good. You don't have to wake up early for school. So me gustaría levantarme a mediodía, comer helado para, or let's say it differently, desayunarme con helado, so to have ice cream for breakfast, y no hacer nada. So let's fix this so that you can see it better. Durante todo el día. This is for lazy people. Como rutina ideal, me gustaría levantarme a mediodía, desayunarme con helado y no hacer nada durante todo el día. ¿Qué significa? As a daily routine or as an ideal routine, I would like to wake up at midday, have ice cream for breakfast, and not do anything throughout the entire day. So that is something, that would make your examiner chuckle, and she might even, or he might even ask you another question like, ¿de verdad? Really? ¿Por qué? Just to kind of continue that wave of conversation. But the alternative for if you have mastered the conditional tense is to just use it for all your verbs. So, para mi rutina ideal, yo me levantaría a mediodía. I would get up at midday. Let's stretch this over a bit so I can get more space. Right? Me desayunaría con helado y no haría nada durante todo el día. Alright, so there you have it. Those are some model responses for your daily routine questions. I hope this helped. I really hope it did. But feel free to give your own little touch or spice to your answers for these questions. You don't necessarily have to use these answers. It would be best if you personalize it, because once you're speaking about something that you really believe, it's usually easier to say it because you're more connected to those ideas. So use these same grammatical structures to form your ideas that you use to answer these questions. Alrighty, so as I always say to you candidates, future candidates, mantengan la calma y aprueben el examen. Keep calm and pass that exam. So thank you so much for watching today's video. As I said before, I really hope it helps. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Muchas gracias y hasta la próxima.